Sí, 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 de Tesalina.
Welcome back, everyone. Right before we start our next topic, we will hand the floor over to the Mariana's Visitors Authority. We have here with us Mr. Thomas Kim and Martin Dueñas. So you have the floor, Thomas.
All right, I hope everyone had a good lunch. Hafide and Tiro, honorable members of our Mariana Islands Legislature. My name is Thomas Kim, the marketing manager of the Marianas Visitors Authority. My colleague here is with me today, Mr. Martin Dueñas, who is the community projects manager. We are truly humbled and honored to be invited to this special occasion with the opportunity to share with you about the Marianas tourism and the work of the Marianas Visitors Authority. So let's begin. Next slide, please. Okay, to set the context for today's presentation, this is our historic visitor arrivals to the Marianas since 1978. 1997 was the highest year at about 750,000 visitors, mostly Japanese at that time. In fiscal year 2019, before COVID, we were at about 425,000 visitors. So far in fiscal year 2024, we are just above 160,000 arrivals as of our latest compiled stats as of the month of May. Overall, arrivals year to date are 61% lower than what they've been before Super Typhoon Yutu and 37% lower than before the COVID pandemic. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of market share, in more recent years, our top performers have been Korea and China. From fiscal year 2018, from fiscal year 2019 pre-pandemic, and up to fiscal year 2024 year to date. We see strong Korea market recovery today, but very few arrivals from China, which was about equal to Korea before the pandemic. China is still very low, but other than some one-day ship arrivals from Japan, China has been slightly outpacing Japan since Hong Kong Airlines started direct flights in April. Our current arrival rate without a strong third source market is very challenging for both the public and private sectors, and we are seeing effects including closure of the hotels, bank branch offices, airlines, and other major businesses. And I do want to mention an item of concern for all of us, and that is inter-island air service, especially to Rota. The MVA supports an exemption from cabotage, which we believe will make inter-island travel for both residents and visitors affordable again. More affordable air service and more air seats will be fastest way to grow tourism in the Marianas. Next slide, please. So who are our visitors? Well, they're a lot similar like the visitors to Guam. We are still a popular destination for families and friend groups. We also attract a respectable amount of MICE travels, repeaters, and SIT and FITs, which stands for Special Interest Travelers and Free Independent Travelers. Our natural beauty is our top attraction, and we also target sports and adventure seekers. Next slide, please. Play the video, please. Okay, funding under a federal disaster recovery grant following Super Typhoon Yutu allowed us to expand our promotions in our offshore offices of Korea and Japan. This also helped us recover from the pandemic as well. One example of our Korea Media Blitz campaign are these giant anamorphic ads in major intersections in Korea with scenes of Saipan, Tinian, and Rota. So these are one of the three major cities, busiest cities in Korea. One is Gangnam, the other is Namdaemun, and the other is Hongdae. There you go. Okay, next slide, please. But of course, there is a wide number of strategies we employ addressing the three pillars of any source market. We partner closely with travel trade, conducting co-op promotions with travel agencies, coordinating fam tours to those who sell the destination, also attending trade shows and more. We have similar activities with our partner airlines as well. And we make efforts to connect directly with consumers to drive demand by conducting co-op promotions with global brands, leveraging social media influencers, supporting television, magazine, and other coverages in the islands. Each of these pillars is important to sustain a healthy industry. Next slide, please. But as the saying goes, before you invite someone to your home, you want to make sure it's clean and presentable. And that's really not just an MVA or GVB job. That's an everybody job. Every department, every business, every community member. So just a few highlights of a few projects undertaken by the MVA. As you see on the screen, we just unveiled this Hafide and Tiro sign in Marpi last week, a tribute to the indigenous languages. It is painted with a reflective paint, so when light is flashed that night, it glows. Pretty cool, right? Next slide, please. The MVA is also excited to be the lead agency for the 1.4 million EDA grant for enhancement projects at 3 of our most popular tourist sites: the Last Command Post, the Bird Island Lookout, and the Suicide Cliff. Almost all our visitors visit these sites. We have begun an A&E design, and we are hoping to break ground on our first project this year. Next slide, please. We've also been encouraged by a growing number of community groups, partnering with us on cleanups, painting the medians, landscaping at the Saipan sign, water blasting and painting at the Japanese, the Korean memorials in Marpi. Our motto is, tourism is everybody's business, and we value this partnership. Next slide, please. On Rota, we recently had high school students repainting the historic Japanese-era sugar train engine and the iconic Japanese cannon. While our staff repainted the Songsong Village Lookout, we repaired picnic tables and benches at the popular swimming hole and repainted and installed solar lights at the Teneto Bridge. This is all in addition to our team's daily responsibility to regularly maintain 16 tourist sites around the island. Next slide, please. One more, sorry. Next slide. There you go. On Tinian again, our main focus is maintaining 17 tourist sites around. This year, that has included repainting at the Suicide Cliff. We also assisted the mayor's office in clearing at the former American Cemetery for a Memorial Day ceremony. And as the historic Northfield is sometimes closed now due to military purposes, we are working to develop new sites. Next slide, please. Such as re-clearing the historic Ginoza and Tachibana trails that have ties to the island's Japanese history, as well as the Long Beach Interpretive Trail. And of course, those trails will now also be maintained by the MVA. So as you can see, even though keeping the house clean isn't the MVA's primary mission, we do take pride in our product, which is our home, our islands. Next slide, please. Another important activity of the MVA are our signature annual events under our Community Projects and Membership Division. By the way, this iconic image is the popular beach jump in Tinian. Next slide, please. We're very pleased that this year to have inaugurated the first annual Rota Marathon on President's Day weekend with 83 registrants from on and off island, as part away as Japan. We knew we had to bring back its own signature event to Rota, and it was really a great kickoff. Started with a tree planting ceremony to tie back to ecotourism, an island-style banquet dinner at the Roundhouse, and strong support from the Honorable Mayor Aubrey Hokuk, the legislative delegation, and the community. Again, we need more affordable air seats to really grow this event to its full potential. Next slide, please. Looking at our annual calendar, these are our signature events the MVA organizes. And on the right are the events organized by the community that we often contribute to. We are proactively helping the mayors get the word out on their events, and we continue to encourage all event organizers to finalize the dates in advance so there's adequate time for visitors to plan and visit. It's a challenge because in the past, these events really targeted mostly locals, but we're gradually making progress and have been seeing more visitors attend these events. Next slide, please. These signature events are held to attract visitors, add value to their stay in the Marianas, and attract media attention to our destination. For example, we hosted 2 celebrity eaters from Japan and Korea at the Oh My Grill International Food Challenge at the 25th Annual Taste of the Marianas Festival last month. Through our Korean influencer alone, the event has already received more than 400,000 worth of PR exposure as monitored by our Korea office. Next slide, please. At December's Hell of the Marianas, we partnered with cycling clubs, airlines, and celebrities in South Korea and Japan. Almost a third of participants came from Korea, and we've gained almost $800,000 in PR exposure. By the way, if any bikers are interested in coming this December for the Hell of the Marianas event, there are cargo boats that you may be able to ship your bikes over on. So please note that. Next slide, please. So before we wrap things up, we would like to quickly share our short 3-minute promotional destination video. Please enjoy. And the model in the video is a famous professional swimmer from Korea turned social media influencer. We wanted to highlight the most popular sites in Saipan, Tinian, and Roto.
No fears or regrets. Just take the jump and hold your breath. It feels good to be alive. Oh, if you trip, get up again. Here we go. We're ascending. I feel so alive. I feel so alive. I feel the blood rush through my veins. I can take on the world when you're next to me. And I feel so alive. I feel so alive.
Thank you. I'm not done yet. Next slide, please. Okay. Overall, it's a challenging time for the industry, but also a time of great opportunity. New investment and destination enhancement, such as the sites at Marpi we have mentioned earlier, as well as the revitalization project in Garapan, and a major uplift on the roads of our beach road. Also, new media campaigns we are constantly planning to implement, and the worldwide publicity thanks to none other Mr. Julian Assange. As our managing director has said, we're in the canoe together. Let us continue to cooperate as we work to improve our respective industries together. In closing, we would like to acknowledge and thank the NMI Legislature for a strong partnership with the MVA, especially during these trying economic times during and following the pandemic. Through this partnership in recent years, we were able to establish our tour guide certification program, also work collaboratively with the Hotel Association of the Northern Mariana Islands to increase hotel occupancy tax, which the majority of the tax go to the funding for the MVA, and of course a lot more. I would like to end this presentation with a simple note, and the note reads, "It takes a village to have a healthy, thriving industry. The Visitors Authority, legislature, government departments, businesses, community, and individuals. Together, we can make the Marianas a world-class destination and a great place to live, do business, and visit." Sizus Masi, Alamoy, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim and Mr. Dueñas. All right, and with that, we will now move on into our next session. Up next, we have the topic 3, which is food security. And at this time, I invite the Honorable Mayor Aubrey Hokog, the Mayor of Rota, for her presentation.
Good afternoon, Hafade, honorable members of the 2 territories that make up the archipelago of the chain of islands here in our great region. One of those islands is the island of Luta, Rota, which I'm a proud resident, proud Gilita, and have been given the humbled honor to serve as mayor. And so I've been asked to share today about what we've been doing to promote food security for the municipality. Next slide, please. So really to just create a plan, we have to understand where we are as a community, where we are as an island, to see what needs to be done to address the concerns of our community. So we had a stakeholders meeting where we called in Department of Lands and Natural Resources, NMC CREES, Luta Soil and Water Conservation District members, our farmers and ranchers to find out what is the current situation happenings on Luta, what are the concerns, and how can we create an action plan that will help us move Rota forward that can address many benefits covering the economy, covering the inclusion or expansion of our farmers and ranchers on Luta, and to really just help build the agricultural community on our island. And so many concerns were shared. One of includes the lack of interest. Many of the farmers on our home island are the older generation farmers. For example, like my parents, great-grandparents, they grew up in a time where that was part of their daily activity, where they would go to school, then they would do their chores, which includes going to the farm, feeding the livestock, planting and harvesting fruits and vegetables, and that was part of their daily lifestyle. But of course, as time has shifted, and MVA talked about that time where there was an economic boom, many parents shifted the priority to having their children focus on education, focus on other jobs that really somewhat steered them away towards farming and agriculture. But those who grew up with that mentality, that mindset, they stuck with it, and you see that now. And so that's some of the concerns that were shared, is that how do we get the younger generation to have an interest in farming? And also another issue that was brought up was that it was so labor intensive that many of the younger generation thought that they could use technology or focus on other professions that would give them the opportunity to earn more money, and really not seeing how what is around us is a great way to earn money. There's many other people in our community, because we do live in a diverse community, that recognize that and see the end benefit and of their hard work, where they plant, harvest, and sell and export to the neighboring islands or even amongst our community. And so we also wanted to look at commercial farmers. We had such a very small number of registered farmers on Rhoda. Speaking to the stakeholders, how many registered farmers there are who have been in communication and working with USDA officials who come and visit the island to provide assistance or technical support. There was only about 12 registered farmers or ranchers. And that was a very small number in comparison to how many people were living there. And these were recognized farmers and ranchers who do harvest, who do sell their produce, not only in the community of Luta, but who do export out. And so one of the things that they do export, and there are very few of them, they export to Guam. Sweet potato, taro, watermelon, calamansi, and many other fruits and vegetables. And so we figured we needed to create a plan. Next slide, please. So we had to come up with goals. And the first goal we needed to address was to create a map of plotted lands of all our registered farmers, because we needed to be able to provide service. But if we do not know where their plot lands are, how could we do that? And so that was one of the first things we did, working with the Luta Soil and Water Conservation, working with DLNR. We created this map. And so we were able to also expand and help, entice more people to register as farmers and ranchers. We wanted to encourage subsistence farming to allow commercial farmers to increase export goods out of Rhoda, because that's one of the ways we see that we could help expand our local economy there. If we could encourage our people to farm and harvest what they would eat for their consumption, that way we can have the commercial farmers focus on exporting out. This would be a great way to help us address our economic issue. And one of the things we also wanted to add on was to ensure the quality of the exported fruits and vegetables and root crops, because we also need to maintain the reputation of that Rhoda has, that we do have good quality produce leaving the island. Next slide, please. And so one of the things that we try to do to really just get us launched and started with promoting subsistence farming was working with the Office of Grants Management. And so we really want to thank Governor Palacios and Lieutenant Governor Apateng, who provided personnel to give us a grant writer specifically for Luta. And so we were working with OGM, and we were awarded a grant from the Office of Insular Affairs. And we titled this grant Tatanum Project, Let's Plant Community Project. And so this was to provide access, or to increase access to healthier foods. And the first option, or initial option for this project or this grant, was to either give our people an option. Either you select pair of chickens and we will provide chicken coop, or you can choose various vegetable seedlings and we will provide, or the grant will provide, soil, fertilizer, and vegetable beddings. And this was a way that we wanted to encourage, because we included enough to cover all residents on Luta. And so when we started this venture, we saw many people choosing the chickens because they see how eggs are so expensive on Rhoda. At one point, a dozen of eggs it cost as much as $7.50 for a dozen eggs. And so many people wanted to farm. Many people wanted to raise chickens because that was a healthier option and a cheaper option than to go and purchase at the store. And because we wanted to promote backyard farming, we went ahead and revamped. And so we decided to give both to families, where they would get not only the pair of chickens, the chicken coop, but also vegetable seedlings and the beddings. That way everything can bundle as one group. And but part of this program is also to provide education. And so with the assistance and partnership with NMC CREES, our residents have to undergo a short info session on best backyard farming and raising chicken practices. Because not only do we want to provide them the materials, but we want to make sure that it's sustainable, that they know what they're doing, and if they do need assistance, we will provide them with the experts who can provide information on what they need. Next slide, please. So the objective of this grant was to introduce and reestablish subsistence farming practices in our Rhoda community, as well as provide opportunities for families to produce and consume homegrown organic vegetables and fruits. So this is an ongoing project, and we have closed out on our first batch, which is catered to about 30 residents. But because there is such a shortage of chickens, we have to halt distribution. And so until we can replenish with our local vendor the inventory of the chickens, we will resume the distribution of this grant. But many people have really expressed interest on this, and so we really are trying to mass produce and get all our residents on board, because we would love to see every household on Rhoda have plants or, have a backyard filled of fruits and vegetables that they can just harvest what they need. So this is a really great plan that we have to somewhat push our community towards getting back into farming. Another thing that we are doing on LUTA to promote food security is our local initiative, the 1,000 Fruit Tree Initiative. Next slide, please. And this is where we are invested to plant 1,000 trees on LUTA all around our island. And so this will be great to promote sustainable agriculture and food security on the island of Rhoda. This will increase the access to fresh and healthy fruits for local population and will contribute to the preservation of the island's natural environment and biodiversity. So this is a community effort, and I'll share more pictures as we continue with the next slide. And we've planted all sorts of trees, from breadfruit, mango, avocado, soursop, guava, mountain apple, citrus trees. And the beauty about this program is that anybody is welcome to come and pick off the trees that you see. We talk to many of our family residents who move outside of Rhoda, and they have to travel to farms to be able to do this. But on Rhoda, we welcome anybody. If you see a fruit, help yourself. Well, these trees will be all around our public sites alongside our road, and we welcome our people, we welcome our visitors to avail of any fruits that have been or that are ready to harvest. And so we continue. You see some pictures. Next slide. And so you see some pictures of our Rhoda leadership. We were launching the planting of these trees, and we have really grown to meet our quota. Our next schedule will be next month, where we will be planting pomegranate trees alongside our airport to Sinopalu Road. Next slide, please. And so we've planted 255 fruit trees so far in 2023. Our nursery now is so full of trees that are ready to be planted. We are on track to meet our quota for 2024. And I just want to highlight that this initiative cannot be done without the community. We have our Rhoda leadership, our cabinet members, our government employees, volunteers from autonomous and nonprofit agencies, our students, even our visitors. And they shared that part of the Rhoda Marathon, we had visitors that came and planted. So this is a community effort, and we would love to welcome people to continue and support our venture. Next slide, please. And so one of the things that we're also trying to push for our next item to promote food security is the creation of a community garden. What we currently have in place on Luta is a hat din omelet. And this is where we store and we plant medicinal plants for many of our cultural practitioners who use medicine to provide as a way to cure whatever ailments that our people may have. And so near the hot dun facility, we have an area that is ideal for our community garden. And so we're looking for the support of our leadership to get the land designation so that we can continue and move forward with this. But this community garden is really just to plant seasonal fruits, vegetables, and root crops. And Rhoda is abundant with land and expert farmers with available best practices and strategies. Next slide, please. And so really with the community garden, it has to be a partnership with our CNMI public school system. Sinapa Elementary School is our targeted school, and the business community, who we will work with a set of classrooms, classroom teachers to educate our children on best practices for farming. Students will have to be responsible to plant and harvest all fruits and vegetables with the assistance of government personnel. And any of the funds that the children or the students will earn because they would have to sell their produce to the business community will be towards the maintenance of the garden and for the school programs. And we've already somewhat surveyed with our business community, and many of them are gung-ho with this idea. They would love to purchase radish. They would love to purchase hot pepper because they're already local value items that they already have on Luta. They would love to export out, and so they would need these items to help with their respective businesses. And so this is a great way to partner with our students to increase the interests of our children to get back into farming. Next slide, please. And so this is just a small gesture, but it really has a place in our community. And we've somewhat revived our Luta Agricultural Fair, which has been in hiatus due to financial, our financial status not being able to fund this program. But with the partnership of NMC CREES and DLNR, we were able to bring this back this year. And we've had about 31 farmers and ranchers who participated and have expressed interest to continue this program. Because as a farmer, they want to showcase their best product. And, once they can plan accordingly, plan early, they'll be definitely ready to compete next year and be able to share and gloat and bring home their title. And so I wanted to really highlight, these two young girls, these two students who are skinning. And I'm sorry, I just want to disclose that they are skinning a cow, but this is one of the things that we see in our community, that our children can learn at a young age how to survive and be independent and rely on their resources to survive. And so this is one of the many things. And they also do farm and plant, but they have to funnel through their parents to be able to compete. But these are great things, and we can hopefully expand to our student population. But last slide, please. And so really just want to tie everything together as a game changer. And so what we've done is really increase the number of our registered farmers and ranchers. From when we first started, we had about 12 to 35 registered farmers. And so when we say registered farmers, we need this data to be able to connect them to USDA so that they can avail of the various funding opportunities that could help them with what they plan to do, whether as a farmer or a rancher. There's so much funding available. They just need to be able to be given that technical support, because many of our farmers say that they're not meant or they're not strong with writing, but they can definitely provide the information. They just need proper guidance. With the map plotting, what was so wonderful about this is that we were able to identify few illegal farming on Rhoda. So when we were able to map out all the commercial and residential farmers, because there's so much land and many of our people have left, we were able to see that there was land being used without the authorization of the landowners. And so we were able to address that immediately. I've already shared about the support of community and nonprofit organizations. They would love to give us funding. We've had already an organization who is already willing to give us funding for our 1,000 Fruit Tree Initiative. And so we definitely will work with that organization. And we do need help, We do need help. So one of the things we're talking and we're tracking about transportation. The municipality of Rhoda, we have 2 docking slips. We are willing to donate to the Hagåtña Boat Basin. We've already been in communication with Director Rory Respicio to see how we can enter into an MOA and how we can increase the traffic between Guam and the CNMI. And we are willing to do this to hopefully expand not only the transportation of passengers, but transportation of goods as well. And lastly is the generational shift. So I myself, of course, Sadly, I'm not a farmer, but I just want to share that my son, he along with his peers, they see the end benefit of hunting, fishing, and farming. They see that if they work hard, they can sell whatever their catch is, they can earn some money, and they can purchase what they need. So there's been a generational shift, and then many of them understand that, and we need to continue to grow with that interest. And so with programs like this and with the partnerships that we need, we can definitely get there and encourage our people to get back into farming, because it really is a great way to make money. There's so much money there, thank you, in that arena. And so we're slowly taking our strides to move towards that direction. So thank you so much. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Hokuk. And here to add on to food security, we have Ms. Patricia Coleman from the Northern Marianas College CREASE program.
Thank you. Just wait for them to queue up my slides. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. So when we think about food security, what we're inevitably talking about is our food system. And this very messy appearing image that you see right here is something we call what we call a causal loop diagram. This is a representation of the food system that we have in the Northern Mariana Islands, and we have a similar one for Guam. So I guess my point here is to show the complexity of the food system. And so when I was asked to present in 5 or 10 minutes an aspect of food security and the food system, I thought, what a daunting task, but I'm going to try and do my best for you. Next slide. So we all know about the high cost of food and the burden that it has on our people, our consumers, and that we import anywhere between 85 to 95% of the food. And so because we're largely reliant on imports, and imports that rely on fossil fuels to ship here, we know that there's a lot of volatility around food costs and food prices. So this shows the red line represents the average cost of food per week in Oregon. And so we've included some villages here from across the region and, of course, the CNMI and Guam. And you can see that for a family of 4, it costs about almost $300 a week in Luta if you follow the Thrifty Food Plan. Why is the Thrifty Food Plan important? It's important because that's what the food stamp program uses to determine the food stamp benefits in our islands. Next slide, please. And we've become increasingly concerned in research and extension about the frame of reference that our children have about where food comes from. And really the mindset that some of us have taken on that we cannot provide our own food, that we don't have the capacity to grow our own food in the islands. Next slide. And when we ask many people, especially young people, to describe what an ideal farm looks like, this is the image that they describe to us. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. Next slide, please. So that image that you saw is based on conventional agriculture, and there's some problems with this system. And I'm going to talk a little bit about those problems and some opportunities we have. And really, this presentation is to focus on how we can increase production in a way that can benefit our environment and the health of our people. Because we can't continue to incentivize and operate on a system of producing food locally that we know harms human health and harms the environment. Next slide. So we have some definitions here. The title of this presentation is Regenerative Security. So food security means enough food for all. Nutrition security, quality, diversity, and nutritional value to meet optimal health and well-being. And regenerative security means restoring, enhancing the health of the ecosystems that produce food. So we're looking further upriver on where we can actually optimize food security and go a couple of steps up and focus on regenerative security and the systems where food is produced, the production chain and the value-added chain. Go ahead. So there's some challenges, and we have some mutual challenges. And these are challenges that come directly from our farmers in Guam and the farmers in the CNMI. So these are some challenges: the high cost of inputs, the high cost of water, fuel, and equipment, water availability on farm plots. Our commercial farm plots, the water schedule is staggered. Lack of farm labor, is that a challenge on Guam? Ungan. Environmental impacts, runoff, pesticides in the water table, and the greenhouse gas emissions that are often blamed on monocrop and conventional agriculture. We have challenges with the data infrastructure, understanding who's growing what and the different market conditions. We have challenges and gaps in our import data. And if anyone wants to take a stab at looking at our import data from both of our places, there's a lot of gaps that give us many limitations in really understanding the challenges and opportunities when it comes to food import and export. Our farmers have a share of getting a market share of the wholesale and retail environments. And at our department, we're at this nexus of industry, retail, wholesale, and producers. And so it's kind of a chicken before the egg, because the farmers say, well, we'll produce more if we know we have the market to sell it. And they say, the retailers, well, we'll buy from them when they're consistent in the food, in the produce that they provide. So it's kind of this interesting feedback loop. We also have challenges around policies and food systems that are geared towards supporting conventional farming and food imports. One of those examples I'm going to talk a little bit about later. And what metrics do we use to measure food security? And is that the right metrics for us to use in our small island places? And of course, as Mayor Aubrey mentioned, we have challenges where is there a real desire among the upcoming generation and the current generation and the older generation to produce food on a commercial scale? Because farming can be extremely challenging and it's hard work. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about an approach to food production that is absolutely applicable to our level and some preliminary work that has been done. So if you look at the X's, that is for conventional farming methods. And there's all these challenges. They don't capture water efficiently. They don't build soil organic matter. Soil gets degraded very easily, harkening back to a lot of the challenges that our farmers have cited. And then we have something called multi-story agroforestry, which is a type of regenerative agriculture. And I'm going to really talk to you today about the opportunities and the concepts which help illustrate regenerative agriculture and its applicability to us here in our islands. Next slide. So again, just to stress the point about monocropping, conventional agricultural approaches, like you saw that row cropping, the challenges with crops and diseases, versus agroforestry. So you probably hear farmers say, oh, I have an infestation of pests, bugs, etc. If you are using conventional farming methods, you will always have those problems. You'll have those problems and problems with the disease of plants, because that's how nature doesn't intend for things to grow in that manner. Go ahead, next slide. So here are some benefits of using multi-story agroforestry or regenerative agricultural approaches. As you can see, there's many. Go ahead, next. And so I want to show you some images very quickly from across our region, because it really takes a change of mindset to understand how regenerative farming looks and how Pacific Island style multi-story agroforestry looks. So here's a commercial agroforest in Samoa. So can you see the contrast between rows and spacing? This is high density using there's different layers to it. and they don't use any pesticides, any insecticides, and they rarely ever use outside inputs like fertilizer. It's all provided there in nature. Next slide, please. Another example of a Pohnpeian taking agroforestry concepts and using it in Maui, which has a lot of real challenges with labor, high cost of inputs, etc. Next slide. Another example from our neighbor island of Yap. Go ahead. And this is kind of an inspirational photo for us. So this is Upolu, Samoa, and this is their village, one of their villages, and you can see they have a lot of agroforestry going on in their residences. Their residents are growing food for themselves, which is another measure of having regenerative security. Do your people know how to grow, harvest, hunt, and raise their own food? Go ahead. Next. So I just want to mention this because this is someone who we work closely with, Dr. Craig Elovich. He's a premier expert in this, and this is what he has to say about people in our region and our history around growing food. That the real masters of agroforestry are those very quiet and humble people of the Pacific who have been doing agroforestry for thousands of years. This is knowledge that is passed on generationally. It's passed on through experience. And I was very, I felt very reassured at the recent Mariana's History Conference when an archaeologist who was doing some studies on Guam had some imaging of what I thought was a traditional agroforest. So this is from a century ago, and she was demonstrating, showing what it was. Next slide, please. So we have some challenges in CNMI and Guam. I was reading some of the stuff from here on the Chamorro Land Trust and people, whether they're following the farming or not, and we have the same thing in the CNMI. So this is an example of homestead in one of our villages, and as you can see, they're very poor, very tough soil conditions. This is a family. They only have time on the weekend. Both of the parents work full-time jobs. Next slide, please. And we were able to help them, this is the same space, transform their space into a robust agroforest that they just tend to when they have time on weekends. Next slide. This is another one of our clients. So I really love this photo because this looks like that image in Samoa. So this is also one of our clients in the Northern Mariana Islands where they've transformed their residents into a robust agroforest. And aside from, the benefits to the environment, carbon sequestration, etc., they also see a number of birds and even rare birds come into this space. Go ahead. But, a lot of times I find that our legislators are more concerned about the economic side of regenerative agriculture and the economic potential. So I wanted to share this image of a farmer from Luta named Ambi. And almost everybody in this room, especially if you're from Guam, if you've had any produce that's passed through the farmer's co-op, you have had produce that Ambi has grown. So this is Ambi's plot, and he had the very poor conditions for growing this food. The soil was totally degraded. There were thick ferns that we had to cut through, and despite that, we were able to meet his goals, exceed his goals for production. So this is not just papaya here. There's actually calamansi, mango, a whole bunch of things, but this is the early phase. And so that's my hand there to show scale for the papayas because I was honestly nervous about what if we would even get any production because this space was so terrible to grow food. And thankfully, we were able to. And Ambi doesn't even have water here. He has to haul water in to this thing. And so can it be done? Can you make money? Yes. Ambi exports to Guam. He also sells to the military as well, to the prepositioned ships. Very possible. Go ahead, next slide. So I just wanted to mention some resources that are available. We have a regenerative agroforestry planning workbook that will be published in the next couple of months, specific for the Marianas, specific on plants, weather conditions, etc. And this is a real tool to help people, whether they're very experienced, like Ambi, or whether they're just starting out if they want to engage in agroforestry at their residence or at the commercial scale like AMBI does. Next slide. So I also wanted to mention some opportunities for working regionally, and one of them is that we have an advanced plant and food analytical lab in the CNMI. There's no other lab like it in the region, and there's actually no other lab like it in the world. And the reason is because we're able to do plant analytics and food analytics. So we are going to open this up for outside the CNMI, and we do have a waiting list of people and places that want analyses done in our lab. We have an excellent food scientist, and we just added a second one this month. So that is available, and it's excellent for product development. They don't have to send samples to the States anymore. If you need nutrition facts for your products, we have all those analytical capabilities just over in Saipan. And maybe we can give Guam the family discount. Next slide, please. Okay, also we ask everyone to look closer around the policies and regulations and whether or not they allow for regenerative farming. We found in the CNMI that our Cagman farm plots do not. So we're working very hard with the Department of Lands and Natural Resources and NRCS to change those regs so that you can do regenerative farming. And our farmers are very happy because NRCS provides even more money to farmers, direct financial assistance if you're doing regenerative farming. Next slide. So here are some considerations for policymakers. Do we need to change land or housing policies to allow regenerative food production? What markets can we incentivize or mandate to buy locally produced food? I know in CNMI we're working very hard with our child nutrition program, breakfast and lunch to 9,000 students, 10 months out of the year. It's a real market opportunity that provides predictability for our producers. And can we advocate for federal assistance to reorient our food system towards local production? Because right now, it's highly predicated on importing food. If you look at all of our food assistance programs, it's all geared towards high food importation, which we know leaves us vulnerable. And can we work as a region to produce food in a regenerative manner? Absolutely, I think we can. And how can we work to reduce reliance on produce imports by a realistic percentage? Even if we break into the import market by providing our locally grown produce by 10%, that will be a huge accomplishment. And all of you in this room who are a part of that can share in that success. Final slide, I think. Oh, is that the last one? Yes? All right. Well, I wanted to say that on behalf of Northern Marianas College, we commit to working with all of you to have a more regenerative food system and to promote regenerative food security. And I want to remind everyone, because often the narrative is, we don't have things here, we can't do things here. But one of the world's greatest solutions to regenerative food production is how we grew food traditionally here in our islands. And now science, as with many other things, is substantiating that our traditional approach to growing food is the right way to do it. So with that, Sizus Moasi, and have a great day.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Up next from the Guam Department of Agriculture, on behalf of Christopher Rosario and Director Munya, we have Jesse Mariano.
Half a day. My name is Jessie Hannah Mariano, and I am the agriculturalist at the Guam Department of Agriculture Biosecurity Division. And today I'll be presenting on behalf of Mr. Chris Rosario, who is our state entomologist. Go ahead. Any slide? The slide.
AV, can you go ahead and queue up the slides?
I can continue the presentation? Okay. Okay. So this presentation involves the regulations associated with agricultural trade between the Mariana Islands. So before we talk about the regulation, we must be mindful about what type of imports are there and the specific type of permit needed for imports. The first type of permit is the state and local permit. These are used for domestic imports and are for importing materials coming from the United States and CNMI into Guam. The second type of permit is the federal permit. These are used for imports such as importing material coming from anywhere outside of the U.S. and the CNMI. Now, moving into the Guam regulations, in the Guam Administrative Rules for Food and Agriculture in Division 2 of Plant Industry, we can't see what regulations are currently in place. In Chapter 10, Section 10101, under import permits, it states that import permits are required for the importation of regulated articles. Regulated articles ranges from anywhere from fruits and vegetables to ornamental plants and orchids. Now, diving into Guam import regulations for CNMI in Title 8 for Food and Agriculture, Division 2, Chapter 10, Section 10121, under enterable fruits and vegetables, it states that all fruit and vegetables imported from CNMI into Guam is allowed except for coconut with husk, sorry. And
excuse me. I'm just going to point out to the colleagues, this presentation is on your desks. Yes.
Yes. This slide. So we're on the slide with the prohibition of mangoes from the CNMI into Guam. So the reason for these regulations is because of the biosecurity risks that may come into Guam. For example, many years ago, a memorandum was issued by the Guam Department of Agriculture in 1998 regarding the prohibition of mangoes from CNMI into Guam. The reason is because several pests, such as the mango seed weevil, was detected in imported mangoes from the CNMI. Next page. After 25 years, there have since been no records of mango seed weevils in the Mariana Islands. However, the Biosecurity Division still needs to stay vigilant in preventing this pest from being introduced on island. Today, the prohibition of mangoes have been lifted from the CNMI coming into Guam. However, it is now a requirement to be 100% inspected at the USDA plant inspection facility, along with being accompanied by a certificate of origin from the CNMI Department of Land and Natural Resources. Now I would like to dive into the CNMI regulations for what fresh fruits and vegetables are enterable into the CNMI Title 85, Department of Land and Natural Resources, Subchapter 85-60.2. Under plant quarantine regulations, it refers to 3 listings of which countries are allowed. Unfortunately, for the first listing, we weren't able to find the list of countries allowed for importing under the Division of Plant Industry. Next page. The second listing referred to the Code of Federal Regulations, the 7 CFR 318.13-4. In Section 4, it states that authorization of certain fruits and vegetables for interstate movement. However, this regulation refers only to the Hawaii and Puerto Rico manuals created by USDA. And lastly, the other Code of Regulations, 7 CFR 319.56, refers to territorial applicability and exceptions, which refers only to Guam and U.S. Virgin Islands, shown on the next slide. And so as you can see, that it just mentions Guam and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Next slide. So digging deeper into the CNMI regulations, we found that there was a quarantine regulations established, which essentially does not allow any fruit and vegetables from Guam, the U.S., and other countries outside of the U.S. soil to enter the CNMI. In order for us to open agricultural trade between the islands, this needs to be amended, but in a way where we still are practicing biosecurity between the islands. In addition to the laws between our islands, next slide. If you remember from slide 3 in Guam's regulation, the major issues the territory faces is that we are not allowed to regulate any foreign commerce coming into the Mariana Islands. This is a federal regulation that has not been followed for decades. And next slide. So before I move into the recommendations, there are certain questions that need to be answered. The first one being, what can legislation do to ensure that produce is arriving in our islands with no pests, and how can we ensure that biosecurity is being practiced within our government agencies? In addition to produce being pest-free, how can we ensure that these products are safe to consume, and how can we set a standard pesticide use across our local farms? And these are some questions to think about. Next slide. So now, if we can figure out these answers, we can recommend the following. 1, lift the ban of fruit and vegetables, but still implement biosecurity protocols and policies to help us detect invasive pests that our island may not have. 2, create a manual specific to our region, either through a state-specific biosecurity plan or a regional biosecurity plan. We also need to create a pest risk database in which some of the other islands do not have, and do an analysis on the risk involved with the pest impact. Number 3, collaboration with the federal government is needed to get continued support from USDA. We must be able to comply with the Code of Federal Regulations. And lastly, 4, as a territory, we can edit the 7 CFR, but through the state plant regulatory official. Guam currently has a state plant regulatory official, while CNMI does not have one. Guam can aid this process through the National Plant Board and USDA APHIS. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mariano. At this time, I open the floor to any of the members wanting to provide comments or have any questions. Recognize Senator Brown.
Thank you very much to our presenters. I mean, I really appreciate the synergy of the presentations. And, you know, it is strange. We do import food, especially a lot of things that can be grown within our region from many thousands of miles at considerable cost. And I think it's just getting through this inspection side of how we can raise or grow, you know, our fruits and vegetables and things that we can interchange within the region and address the inspection aspect. I know the whole USDA issue has been a point of concern in our ability to actually be able to grow these produce and exchange it within our islands. I mean, you know, Ponape, for example, with their tangerines that they're very well known for. The same here. I mean, we do have a lot of produce also coming in from Rhoda, but there are things we can grow here. And while we do on occasion have a typhoon or two, I mean, the ability to go back and replant a lot of these, particularly vegetables, are within a matter of weeks, I mean, that we can produce some of these things in our agriculture. So I think, how can we address that? Because we talk about food security, but again, you know, there's a whole industry that is around, including shipping, to bring all this produce into Guam that, you know, as we know over time, it's not the freshest. And how do we encourage the whole idea of agriculture and doing it in a safe way that, you know, we're not using as much chemicals for our community and a more healthier perspective? Because we go back and look at our traditional foods and how much healthier they are. We talk about diabetes and the other health issues that our people are suffering from. When you go around Guam, you see the increase of new facilities for dialysis. That's the one thing we've grown in the last few years. We used to have 1 or 2. Now we have them, in Derido. We have a newer one in Mangilo that's just recently opened. And so there's a whole cast of issues that we can address that mutually can be beneficial to us, to our health, and then just the cost and the opportunity of having, you know, fresher vegetables and produce that we can interchange within the region. More importantly, the ability to even export. I mean, we are within Asia. There are a lot of tropical plants also and fruits that we can also produce here and export. And that I would like to see. I mean, the presentations are quite dynamic, and all the presenters that spoke this afternoon certainly provided a lot of information. I'm very pleased to see what you're doing in the Northern Mariana Islands. And I just think we have an opportunity to go beyond talking about it and taking advantage of it. But I know historically the issue of inspection and making sure, you know, before we always heard about the fruit fly issue and things of that nature. But how do we get over that hump so that we have an ability to actually grow these resources? And even within our tourism industry that I know we're still struggling with, of course, since COVID, but provide that so that our visitors have a true tropical experience when they come to the islands. It will make our presence more unique than what they have at home. So I just wanted to add that. Is any of the presenters maybe can provide any feedback? I know I touched a lot of issues, but I think the core point is how can we grow beyond where we're at, because we still have the opportunity to do that. And any of you would want to respond to that is what do you think is our biggest barrier, and what do we need to address to expand the capabilities of our agriculture to grow and interchange within the islands?
This is open to any of the presenters from the food security topic. Ms. Patty, it looked like you had something you want to add.
I think part of it is when we think of the food system the way we're thinking of it now, and when our frame of reference is conventional agriculture, it really changes how we view what is possible. And so I think we really need to shift our paradigm to regenerative security and building and supporting systems for local food production. And, I think I've been actually very impressed with Guam's Chef Association and their willingness to engage with producers and make it very seamless to pull that into the marketplace. There's also a relatively well-run farmers co-op here, and I think there's some lessons we can learn from each other. But I think as we dive deeper into what regenerative security is, it'll shift our thinking in a very positive way into what is possible for our islands. Thank you.
I just want to make a quick comment also. I think it can be done at the more commercial level, but then also when I was growing up, my grandfather's backyard was almost like going to your own grocery store, because a lot of the fruits and vegetables that we would buy now, you just walked outside and you picked it. It could be from your doni to your calamansi to the tsoti for the red rice. But these were things that were grown. Our lifestyle now obviously is very different compared to that. But I like the presentation where through traditional agriculture, to be able to do that without chemicals and be able to include and integrate that in a system that almost is self-sustaining is pretty impressive. And it's probably something of learning a lot of our old traditions might be more helpful in moving forward. So I appreciate it. Again, thank you for responding to the question. And I really have to tell you, all of you that presented this afternoon, I was very impressed with your presentations. Incredibly dynamic. Thank you. Continue to do the work you do.
Thank you. I recognize Senator Burnett.
Thank you to the presenters. Mayor Hokog, your Auntie Maria was texting me during your presentation, and she told me to tell you that you took her back all the way to her childhood. And I'm very encouraged by, I didn't even know what Nana was doing when I was growing up was called regenerative security, but there's so much to learn from our elders, and I agree we do need to kind of shift our mindset, because we are producing more local food, but I think there's kind of this combination of the Western way of doing it with, the very, for me, unsustainable for our delicate environment, right? And maybe we do need to shift our mindset to more regenerative security. But also, I think things as simple as, some of our people will go to the grocery store and they'll buy 2 avocado for $12, and matutudai avocado, it's falling on the road, so I think that the food we grow stands up with the food around the world, but I think we also have to find a way to do it sustainably, because a lot of the crops that we do grow, eggplant, green beans, anybody who's been on the farm, if we're growing these in the Western way, that requires a lot of chemicals and pesticides and fertilizers. So I'm very encouraged by a lot of the different islands in the Marianas being on the same page relative to this topic. Sidos Masi.
Thank you, Senator Burnett. I recognize Senator Taitagui.
Sidus Masi. And thank you to all those who presented. Food security is very dear to my heart. I'm a southern girl from Minalahan, so Southerners are known for being farmers. And I wish I had a greener thumb, but I have several relatives who still maintain at this time. And we try to look at GCC for, the apprenticeship programs and boot camps. But we also have to look at the ability for these, for agriculture to be also a product of the next brain, our children getting into the importance of food security. Food security, also I'd like to always, hopefully that we connect not with just food security, but to combine it with water security. Because those two are the greatest things that we need to survive. It's not money, it's not gold. You can't eat gold, a bar of gold, you can't drink it either. But food and water is our gold. And we need to look at areas like GCC or even the universities to push forward on that type of boot camp, moving forward. I saw the suggestions from the Guam agriculture. I think these are going to be great ideas, and I want to thank you for coming forward and finding ways to assist the CNMI, bringing things closer, to helping both our islands work together. But I did wanted to bring up, ask from the university, I guess. Okay. Patty. Is it Patty or just Patty?
Either one.
Okay, just wanted you to touch on the importance. I know a little bit about agroforestry that you brought up, so I want you to see if you can integrate climate change and the importance of the two combined together. Again, that's very important for us too, as we have to deal with that. I mean, we all know that the Pacific Islands are the ones that are really having to deal with climate change and mitigation. And we always have to keep that at the forefront as we're looking at agriculture and how this would integrate with that. So if you can bring something to light with regards to the two.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Senator Taitagui. Yes, actually, so multi-story agroforestry and regenerative ag actually provide ecosystem services for the environment. So this is one of the reasons why we call it regenerative, because conventional farming methods are very extractive and exploitive. It's taking from nature, doing harms as long as you get the yield that you want. And that has brought us to this point where we are in human history, where we're really facing the effects of climate change and pollution to our water supply. I showed the slide there, 80% of Americans having glyphosate in their urine. That's from using, dangerous chemicals in conventional farming. And so, yes, not only does it sequester carbon, it also builds biodiversity. And biodiversity, there are studies, one of them is done by a colleague of mine, showing that having this biodiversity doesn't only improve nature and environmental conditions, right? So particularly in places where it's very dry, where they lack rain, where they're having droughts, having regenerative multi-story agroforestry can actually increase rainfall, which is something that nature needs. So it creates this very regenerative cycle of, building nature and nature providing what we need in order to have a healthy environment. I did also want to say there's also emerging research from our colleagues at Ma'o Farms showing that folks who work on regenerative farms, which takes far less labor than conventional farming, and who eat the food from those farms actually have significant improvements in pre-diabetes risk and diabetes. So it actually changes their gut biome. And of course, there's huge benefits to mental health and just built environment restoration. So there's a lot of benefits that come from doing regenerative multi-story agroforestry. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Patty, for that. I appreciate it. But as we move forward to and we discuss the food security, that we always need to incorporate the water security as well, because it does go hand in hand. Whatever we plant in the ground and help it grow, we got to know what we're putting in the ground, because it can affect our water. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Taitagui. I recognize Senator Lujan.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. This is not food security, but it's regarding growers. And, you know, the 37th Guam Legislature just tackled this past session regarding the cannabis industry. And there were quite a few senators that stood up that basically quoted the CNMI in their success in the cannabis industry. We had just tackled a bill regarding to waive the need for a laboratory. So it's not a food security, but maybe if somebody can give us an insight as to best practices or maybe even best policies at this point, because it was quoted quite a few times that, again, CNMI has, again, the industry that has moved on and able to sell cannabis. And so I guess this is out to anybody that can answer this question, or that can best answer the question.
Thank you, Senator Lujan. I think the only restriction that I know of is federal. So we can't even transport cannabis to Tinian or Rhoda because of federal statutes. It's still considered a level 1 narcotic federally. There is a movement in the United States to try and downgrade that so that we would be able to. We did have an investor from Long Beach, California, come up to Saipan because they wanted a reputable company from Long Beach come up to Saipan and take a look at the infrastructure, because they wanted to be able to export, because we have cannabis, the cannabis industry established for both medicinal and recreational. I think it's the first in the region that we actually launched. I know Guam is having issues with their industry, but they came out to the CNMI and were taking a look at the infrastructure, and that could possibly, the solution to that could possibly be in our Section 902 consultations.
But the CNMI is not requiring a lab, right, for products to be tested before sold, and how is that being tackled? And
so the lab is required to test for the byproducts of cannabis, meaning gummies and, you know, that kind of products. So we don't sell those currently unless they're imported from somewhere else.
So one of the things that we did in the CNMI is that we completely threw out the medicinal marijuana, because you need analytical capabilities in order to prescribe. So our lab, if the federal government ever allows it, we have the analytical capabilities to, you know, put the various potencies, et cetera, in which case it could be prescriptive and prescribed and medicinal marijuana, et cetera. I did want to say one other thing, which I forgot about the marijuana industry. Oh, and the other thing that we have is we have a non-FDIC bank. So that's a major challenge, is that FDIC banks can't handle money from dispensaries or in the value chain. So we have a Bank of Saipan is non-FDIC. So they're able to handle the money from our dispensaries and from marijuana production.
Are there any regulations in regard to maybe the pesticides that are being used and things of that nature, or for the industry, for the spraying, I guess, for
for marijuana or any crops?
For at least for marijuana, right?
For marijuana.
Yeah.
So the general practice in the CNMI is that the producers really try their very best not to use any chemicals. I mean, they don't like the cost, and then they have to get certification, pass an examination, and then they're subject to random inspections by our Bureau of Environmental and Coastal Quality. So they really try not to use it. So I guess that's my response to that question.
And so you, I mean, so you have commercial growers then?
Yeah, we have commercial growers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Who are not our clients, just to put that on record.
We're you know, we've had this law that has been legal, but we're new at this. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lujan. I recognize Representative Castro.
Thank you, Vice. I just wanted to bring back that statement brought on by Senator Brown. It actually gave me flashbacks of my grandma's backyard with the toti and everything. And to look at it today, very few people have a toti trees in their backyard. Most of the people are buying the seeds from the Philippines and making red rice out of it because it's convenient. But if we look at this from an economic standpoint, that also hurts our GDP because we're importing more than we need to. So this whole concept of regenerative agriculture and it improves the GDP because we import less fertilizers, we import less products. So how do we move forward from here? Both Guam and the CNMI have land grant institutions. You have UOG, you have NMC. There are probably more opportunities and programs designed to make agriculture trendy again, providing the tools in terms of land. But with any product, we just need to cut all the barriers to entry, the red tape, and make it easier for people to get into the industry as well. Of course, not to compromise safety and security. But if it's more convenient to import things, then we're going to continue to import. But just by looking into reducing the imports on eggs and other products, getting more people to be producers is going to definitely help our economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Castro. We'll close out before we head to our break with Representative Yumo.
Thank you, Vice Chair. A question for Mayor Aubrey, if I may. You touched a little bit about the Sinamay or Rota Guam export. Is there any, I guess, constraint barriers, or is it quality, quantity with the, I guess, products that are being shipped over to the island of Guam?
Not to my knowledge. Our farmers have not shared that. There was an incident where I guess one of the products that was brought over to Guam had, I guess, a disease, but we wanted to make sure, or not disease, but it was deemed rotten. And so we want to make sure the quality of the produce that are leaving Rota, is at its best, because that's a reputation that we've maintained. Our ancestors were farmers, so as is for all the islands. And so more so we want to make sure we maintain that reputation.
Yes. And the reason why I asked, because we had a little gathering last night and we drove around looking for lemon or calamansi. We couldn't find fresh ones, so I was wondering if there was an issue between sending calamansi over and...
So one of the things that we know that we can definitely get to encourage our people to farm is, and we've talked about this with Mr. Joe Guerrero, is that if we can ensure or really encourage our people or inform them that there is a high demand, that there is a guarantee, right, of a business or a hotel or any, I guess, military vendor that would, I guess, guarantee them business, that it would encourage more people to farm. Many of our people now, they see the hard living because of the austerity that we're going through. Many of them already subsidize their living. They hunt, they fish, they farm. And we can encourage more people to get into farming, because it's difficult already at this point. But with our children, and I've shared with this before, because my son, he was telling me that, Mom, I want to buy a car when he becomes a senior in high school. And what can he do to earn money to get to that point? And I think our children recognize that. Many of them, they hunt, they fish, they farm, they harvest, and they sell. And so they get that money, and that's what they use to, I guess, support their daily needs. So I think that's something that we can encourage, because many of it is just really the tedious labor that comes with it, but it just has to be accustomed and incorporated into their lifestyle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, we have one more, Senator Parkinson, and then we'll take a break after.
Thank you very much. Buenas, everyone. So I just had some general comments and queries regarding this issue of food security, because for me, the issue of food security really comes down to balance, specifically in a balance between our environment and the needs of the populace. And when I hear these talks and these presentations, which are very good presentations, by the way, thank you so much for that, I am actually kind of looking at this like, almost like a math problem. My question is for anybody that is, can we reach 100% sustainability with regenerative farming at our current population levels? That's because that's what I want to know. Because when I think about feeding a populace on a society-wide scale, it comes down to calories per acre. Do we have enough acres, not just land acres, but ocean acres and fisheries to provide for the population numbers that we are trying to sustain? And if regenerative farming and these more renewable practices cannot hit us at 100% sustainability at our current population levels, at what population levels does it reach sustainability? Because for me, these are important questions, because we are so beholden and at the mercy of our supply lines. And so, it leads to public emergency questions of, if our supply lines were disrupted in some way by disease, war, pestilence, or whatever, how long can our island survive without a new infusement of food and supplies? And so, if any of the presenters have any answers to those questions, I'd definitely love to hear it, especially on, what kind of, what percentage of the population could we look to realistically feed with these practices locally, so that if we do have some sort of catastrophic emergency that disrupts our supply lines, we have a better understanding of how to approach this emergency. Are we talking about days of sustainability in our island, weeks, months? That's a real concern with me, because as stability increases in the region, this becomes a much more important thing for us to really buckle down on, because it starts to go from a theoretical problem to potentially a realistic problem. So just kind of my thoughts and questions about it. If anybody's got any insights, please feel free. Thank you. That's what I have.
That's a great question and consideration. And we've never done an analysis to that scale, but we are able to, basically what we do is we model and simulate the production based on what the farmer's goals are. So we can project production. But I think, part of the major challenges that we have is building the local appetite to farm and to grow food regeneratively. And that's why if you look in a lot of traditional and indigenous models, there were specific people who grow food, or everybody knows some way to grow food. So it's not very, large scale. Now, I think the other side of the equation is that we also have tourism that, we have to account for in the food system, which is a great opportunity and also a great challenge. So can we use the total land area and, simulate the actual production to find out how much we can produce? Yes, we can do that. UOG can do it, we can do it as well. But I think the major variable is people's willingness to actually produce food. So further research is warranted on our part, Senator.
And I guess my other question is, at our current population levels, would it be possible for us to find a self-sustaining food source that does not require us leaning on industrial farming practices? Because that's my big concern too, is like, yeah, I'm sure we could probably get ourselves fully food sustainable here on the island, but at what cost to our environment? You know, industrial farming does a very good job at feeding the numbers of people, but we see that they're very hard on water sources, they're very hard on the land, the waste products they produce are great, and so, you know, it comes back to my original point of balance. I do want to feed everybody, but at the same time, are we willing, like, what are the levels that we're willing to compromise our environment to make sure everyone's fed, or do we keep importing food and leave ourselves open to the threat of global instability? And so I'm not quite sure what the answers to that is, so I'm looking forward to a future discussion on this. So thank you for your insights, ma'am.
Thank you. And I did just want to make one final point that with regenerative agriculture, we use zero pesticides, zero herbicides, zero, you know, we really try and minimize any inputs. We even try not to use any fertilizer because we know that, you know, science tells us that the more outside of nature inputs that you put, it actually can degrade the soil conditions, you know, like you were alluding to. So I think we have a strong way forward and an approach that works, but I very much agree with you that it has to be balanced and it has to be phased in over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson. At this time, members, we will take a break and we will be back at 3:15. Thank you. Mic test. All right, everyone, let's settle down. We'll close out our afternoon presentations. All right, welcome back, everyone. There's a slight change to our agenda. Can I get everyone's attention? Thank you. There's a slight change to our agenda. We have up next presenting on the Marianas Regional Security from the U.S. Coast Guard, the Commander for the U.S. Coast Guard Forces, Micronesia Sector Guam. We have Mr. Robert Kistner.
I'm sorry. Let's get that mic on. You just turn it on.
Hafide Zentarao, distinguished members of the Marianas Islands Legislature Association, and esteemed guests. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today and for your dedication to fostering collaboration across our islands. I'm honored to speak on behalf of the United States Coast Guard and share our commitment to the safety, security, stewardship, and prosperity of the Marianas region. Our mission comes with a broad set of responsibilities and challenges, much like your roles in ensuring the well-being and security of your communities. We understand the importance of managing risks to our people, our infrastructure, safety, our regional reputation, and global stability, and we are actively working alongside you to address these critical issues. This year, as we commemorate 80 years of peace in the Pacific on Liberation Day, it is my hope that together we can ensure a future of enduring peace, freedom, and self-determination in our region. Based on some input in advance of today's event, I'd like to comment on a few topics of likely interest to you. In terms of our current efforts in the region, our enduring partnership with the people of the Marianas is a testament to our commitment. From our persistent presence in the region since World War II, operating Loran stations in Guam and CNMI, as well as steadily increasing our Coast Guard capabilities across our statutory missions over the decades since, we feel deeply connected to these islands and their people. We are steadfast in our key missions of protecting mariners at sea, halting illegal activities in fishing in U.S. waters, and preserving the marine environment and its inhabitants for the enjoyment of future generations of Chamorros and Carolinians. Recent Coast Guard mission activity in the region includes forward deployment of our law enforcement teams quarterly, multiple FRC patrols, which also yielded our participation in CNMI's Battle of Saipan Parade with our crew from Frederick Hatch, and the Liberation Day Parade with our crew from Oliver Henry and also our sector boarding team. A successful first ever Coast Guard sponsored full-scale pollution exercise here in CNMI. Our thanks for that to the many partners who helped in that endeavor. Multiple search and rescue safety workshops with our island partners here and beyond. And establishment of Marine Safety Unit Saipan as a full Coast Guard command. In terms of our expansion plans within the region, the Micronesia region is vast and requires more bandwidth to save lives, enforce our laws, and protect the marine environment. In consideration of this large area of responsibility, I'm excited by the supportive comments I hear from U.S. and Coast Guard leaders regarding continued investment in this area and the assignment of additional resources. Discussion of increasing the Coast Guard footprint in the region speaks to the strong desire and need for our communities to have a capable and forward-leaning Coast Guard. The Coast Guard has significant aspirations to grow Coast Guard presence in this region over the next decade, and as those concepts are considered and evaluated, I hope they find great support in Congress. In the near term, Congress recently approved the construction of 2 new fast response cutters, and I'm highly optimistic that these will be assigned to Forces Micronesia here in Guam. This will significantly expand on the capability presented by the current complement of 3 cutters. Currently, Coast Guard Cutter Myrtle Hazard is undergoing major maintenance work, and the other 2 Guam FRCs will follow behind for the same sustainment to ensure our cutters are fit and ready to continue to provide exceptional service throughout the region. An existing Coast Guard RBS Small has been identified for reallocation. Though we continue to work through the logistical details, there is a strong potential for positioning that small boat in CNMI, where it will be trailered and ready for use by Coast Guard crews present in the area, for example, during Marine Safety and Security Team or Sector Boarding Team deployments. We anticipate an October start for our Command Center renewal project, which will modernize and increase the effectiveness of our Command Center space, which is our 24/7 watch team's space for search and rescue and other missions throughout the region. Additionally, a renewal project for the Coast Guard footprint in Guam recently received approval, and it will be added to the Coast Guard's FY27 budget request. If funded and after constructed, this project will significantly improve Coast Guard mission capability throughout the region. Our recent aviation deployment from Air Station Barbers Point was deemed a resounding success by all, and we are actively looking to conduct a similar evolution when resources become available. Throughout these pending upgrades, we will continue our regular deployments and exercises. It is vital to me that we continue our active presence and posture throughout the region to maintain and strengthen our partnerships. As I look back and note that our fast response cutters and sector boarding team arrived in Guam and started operations barely 3 years ago, and noting that a significant portion of that time included ongoing COVID restrictions, it is truly amazing to see what they have enabled and achieved in such a short period of time. In terms of the issues and challenges facing the United States Coast Guard, one of the current challenges we are addressing is recruitment, and I believe that the people of the Marianas can play a critical role in helping us. Ensign Gino Gonzalez just graduated from the Coast Guard Academy and arrived at his first duty station on United States Coast Guard Cutter Weishi, which operates under Coast Guard Pacific area and engages on patrols throughout the Pacific and beyond. We also just welcomed the newest class of Coast Guard Academy cadets, and there are now 9 cadets from the Marianas enrolled at the Academy, 7 of those from CNMI. As I consider the careers ahead of these young people, I think of the CNMI-born members now or recently part of the Coast Guard team here who have played an outsized role in the Coast Guard's work throughout the region. Lieutenant Commander Freddie Hochstetter of Tinian served with distinction as the commanding officer of U.S. Coast Guard Cutter Oliver Henry, and in slightly over a year significantly expanded our positive relationships in the Pacific and conducted several firsts. Christine Igasamar of Saipan was recently promoted to the rank of commander and is now the Coast Guard's highest-ranking Chamorro woman. Though she just departed from Guam for a prestigious assignment as our liaison to our colleagues in the Philippines, her work over the past 2 years as maritime advisor provided incredible insights and connections throughout the region, building our COFA Nation liaison program to the needed and highly effective mechanism for ongoing connection, partnership, and support with Palau, FSM, and RMI. Chief Richard Hofstadter of Tinian is also an integral part of our exercises and readiness team in Guam, and waiting in the wings to become the next recruiter-in-chief for this region. Operations Specialist Brandon Hodges, a local boy from Agana Heights, was just advanced from OS3 to OS2 and has been critical to our Sector Command Center team as they negotiate around transfer season and key staffing shortages. In addition to their Coast Guard roles, these members have also played an outsized role in mentoring community members in the CNMI and COPA nations, and resulting in incredible people from this region in our ranks. As I consider these exceptional Coast Guard members, it is clear that those from this region contribute to the Coast Guard both through their stalwart support to our missions, as well as by educating our service and our service members about Micronesia. A unique aspect of our service in the Coast Guard is the high probability of serving locally in the community you grew up in. We have greatly benefited from the local knowledge and expertise of our Micronesian service members. Their unique perspective enables us to reach further and make more connections with island communities in Micronesia and throughout the Blue Continent. I ask and encourage you to help with our recruiting, however able, by amplifying the opportunities that joining the Coast Guard presents and encouraging the young people throughout the Marianas to consider the Coast Guard as a career. Siju Smasi, thank you all again for the invite to be with you today and provide an update regarding Coast Guard team here in this region. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you, Commander Kushner. Any questions from the members? Recognize Representative Yumo.
Thank you, VP. I guess my question is, with the increase in maritime border crossing, would there be additional resources, or I guess a cutter, I'm not sure what it's called, be based in Saipan anytime soon, or?
So I don't anticipate any, other than the response boat small that we've identified, I don't anticipate any specific growth of Coast Guard resources into Saipan in the near future. Basing that asset there will enable us to operate more productively when we do go up to Saipan, whether that's the Marine Safety Security Team or the Sector Boarding Team, because the asset will already be there, and instead of operating largely on shore or only in collaboration with our local partners, we'll also have our own asset to employ. So in terms of marine crossing, I suppose it depends specifically what you're talking about, but I do think that though a small step forward is putting the 29-foot RBS up there is going to be an important step forward towards creating more Coast Guard capability, at least within Saipan, and we'll look, as we look to the future, we look to create more Coast Guard capacity.
Thank you. Recognize Representative John Paulson.
Thank you, Vice President. Thank you, Captain Robert Kushner, for gracing us with your presence. My question to you would be, what are there any programs under the Coast Guard that could perhaps you guys can assist our law enforcement in availing in some yachts or vessels that we can have our law enforcement assist also when your presence are not there in our area?
So the only program that I'm aware, there's no program for divesting of Coast Guard equipment to, say, a civilian agency, for example. But the best program that would be a potential fit for that is the Port Security Grant Program. The Port Security Grant Program is an annual program operated. It's a FEMA grant program, I believe. We do push out information about the Port Security Grant Program every year to the maritime community in all of our ports. So the Area Maritime Security Committee for CNMI and for Guam, they would have gotten the information about the Port Security Grant Program already. But that is a way where you can request physical resources to support security and potentially other purposes. I know one of the focuses is on cybersecurity related issues, and it is a limited pool of funds, but that's the best thing I can think of at this moment.
Thank you for that response. And so my last and second question would be, are there any plans with the Coast Guard with regards to foreign vessels on the northernmost part islands on the CNMI with all this illegal fishing within our waters and all that and whatnot?
Certainly. So, as I said, the FRCs that we have now are the fast response cutters that are currently assigned to Sector Guam, and hopefully with more coming, they offer a much greater capability than our old 110-foot patrol boats that used to operate in this area. They can go considerably further offshore. They have a greater endurance because they are a larger platform with a larger crew. So as we plan out our patrol schedules over the course of the coming year, we'll continue to focus on all of the areas that we think are important patrol areas. So that would include the northern islands of CNMI, and also the new marine sanctuary.
Thank you, Captain Krishna. You, Vice President.
Thank you, Representative Sablan. I recognize Senator Barnett.
Sijus Wasi, Senate Vice President, and good afternoon, Commander Kistner. I wanted to ask if you would be able to share with our legislatures any efforts, if any, that Coast Guard Sector Guam and beyond is utilizing relative to illegal drug smuggling and drug enforcement?
So, obviously, countering the transport of illegal drugs is one of our primary interests. It is a mission that we are focused on. We certainly patrol at sea as a one aspect of the total mission that we total mission effort in the counter drug mission area. However, it is also large. You know, the maritime environment up here is large, and so patrol resources have limited capabilities. In addition to the work that we do at sea, we also focus in our prevention mission sets in terms of looking for suspicious containers or other means where illicit substances could be carried in as part of cargo. Included in that are we call them MASFO, multi-agency strike force operations. So we conduct those periodically, which gives us a opportunity through partnering across agencies to essentially inspect all containers. The Coast Guard's authority for containers is typically limited to hazmat, but when we partner with other agencies, we can get a broader set of authorities to bring to bear, and then we can all operate together and to do container inspections for all to the extent of each of our individual agency authorities, but all together. So, and then beyond that, it's intelligence. We do have an intelligence segment of the sector, and we are always trying to gain more information in terms of what might suggest that there is a area of concern or a potential shipment that is suspicious.
Thank you for that answer, Commander. I also wanted to ask, as I'm sure you're aware, over the last few years, we've read in the media instances where, you know, several hundreds of pounds of cocaine or other illicit drugs have washed up on Guam's shores. So are you able to speak to how much involvement or how much of a threat drug smuggling from China is to our region?
With apologies, I'm not familiar with the beginning notion that you had there about drugs washing up on the shores of Guam, but we'll definitely look into that and try and get back to you.
How about the second part of the question? The involvement or threat of China relative to drug smuggling in our region?
So I would think that there's I don't know I'll have a great answer for you, but you know, there's always a threat that any malign actor could be attempting to get drugs into Guam, CNMI, or any other part of the United States. Their mechanisms to do that are somewhat limited, right? That the drugs getting here are either going to come by air, sea, or I guess a combination of that, postal, like mailing of drugs. So, to the extent that we can close those vectors and minimize that risk, we're going to do that regardless of who we think the malign actor is. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Commander. Thank you, Senator Vice President.
Thank you. I recognize Vice Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. Thank you very much, Commander, for being here and doing the presentation on behalf of the Coast Guard. I want to say that over the last few months, we have seen illegal migrants make their way to our island of Guam. My question is, how can our local governments work better with the Coast Guard to better protect our borders within this region?
So, I know that there's a concern about the potential for alien migration between CNMI and Guam. Now, in terms of how to characterize that, I think Customs and Border Patrol, and actually it's a complicated legal issue, so I think that there's a lawyer could explain it better, but I understand from a 2009 court precedent that an alien migrating between CNMI and Guam is not they have already passed through a port of entry, and so it is not another entry to transit from one place in the United States to another place in the United States. So in light of the legal underpinnings of what it means for a person to transit from CNMI to Guam, our role as the Coast Guard is to ensure safety of life at sea. So we have a compliance role when it comes to vessels and passengers at sea, which is for passengers for hire. There is a requirement that they have a licensed operator at a minimum for passenger vessels that are carrying up to 6 passengers, and then for passenger vessels that are carrying more passengers, that would fall into the category of an inspected vessel, which not only has licensing requirements, but various inspection requirements. So if we identify a vessel that is operating and is not meeting its compliance requirements, we would terminate that vessel and return it to its port of origin. The other aspect from which we care about vessels and ports at sea is from search and rescue. So if we have a vessel that is in trouble on the sea, then we will respond in accordance with our search and rescue responsibilities. We will make a maximum effort and use all resources available that we have or that we can leverage from our partners to effect a rescue of the people who are in danger at sea.
Thank you very much, Commander. I did want to note, Mr. Vice President, one more thing on a comment to extend my undunkla nasitsuus masi on your presentation. You talked about our Chamorro men and women who are serving in our Coast Guard Sector Guam family, but more importantly for the protections, especially in our oceans. You asked about recruitment. And, you know, we do know that there's a graduation coming up, and there's some local boys, gentlemen that will be graduating. And you talked, maybe the question I want to ask is, how can they get the information to join the Coast Guard, and what outlets do you have here on Guam, CNMI, and our brothers and sisters of the Blue Continent so that they can join the Coast Guard? Because this is a region where military support, the enlistments are, we don't need to advertise, they come to you. So if you can share any of those numbers or addresses.
No, I don't have the numbers. I can come unprepared. I don't have the numbers and addresses. However, if you do a quick Google search, there is a brand new Coast Guard recruiting office. There's always been a Coast Guard recruiting office here, but we have a brand new one that just opened up in a new location. I guess other than a quick Google search for the Coast Guard recruiting office near you, which should yield contact information and an easy connection to someone who's really excited to talk to you, you can also just reach out to any person in blue, except apparently me right now.
Well, we just want to say thank you, and we know that we do have a local Chamorro that will be graduating next week, JC Ivan Blanco, and we want to congratulate him because he's doing a good job. So thank you for including him as part of the Coast Guard family. Sainamasi. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. I recognize Representative Vincent Aldon.
Thank you, Vice President. And thank you, Captain, for being here. So I do understand that, the Coast Guard's role is to protect life at sea and to ensure that any vessel comes within our waters are adhering to our, the safety protocols and regulations of the United States, correct? Is there any way that, that the Coast Guard can assist in protecting, the Guam and the Northern Marianas Islands, fishing, the right to fish areas and the submerged islands? Is there anything that the Coast Guard can do to help us mitigate or to try to eliminate, these illegal fishing and whatnot in our oceans?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. So our fast response cutters are out there patrolling to the maximum extent of their ability. We are, I would say, IUUF fishing is one of our primary focus areas in this region, and illegal fishing in U.S. waters or even in the EEZs of foreign nations. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right. So, and then my second question is, would it not benefit, like, let's say, for example, if the the Gulf Guam or the CNMI government, right, would go into a, like an exclusive agreement with, let's say, Japan to come and fish in our waters, because we definitely do not have the vessels, the commercial fishing vessels, to go out there and fish and sell to the world market, but they do. And if we could invite them in, wouldn't that help the Coast Guard at the same time police the, extent of the oceans that we have, so that they can report, because they have the exclusive right that we provided them, to fish in our water. At the same time, we benefit from them fishing in our, like, we get royalties from that, and then at the same time, if they see any other vessels that are not recognized or are not supposed to be in that area, that they could report to you, instead of, Coast Guard just going out there and, doing boxes, waiting for somebody to show up.
Yeah, so I guess I would add, in terms of patrolling, we use, in addition to just patrolling directly with our assets, we use electronic tools to help us. So we look for vessels on AIS or other information systems that maybe help us identify that there are vessels in the area. Now, certainly vessels can go dark and things like that, and that's where physical patrol is critical. We also use, when available, we'll use our C-130s to participate in some of the WCPFC fishing operations, and aerial sighting is obviously a helpful way to identify fishing vessels that we don't know about or can't see of other means. As for your question about a Japanese fishing vessel, I believe that that would not be permissible, because fishing U.S. waters requires a U.S. flagged vessel.
Okay. So even though, like, let's say, for example, even though we have the right to fish in the 12 nautical miles, but like I said, we do not have the commercial fishing vessels to do such an adventure, right. But we bring them in because this is an economic standpoint, not so much as self-defense, but just as an economic standpoint, where they come in and they fish, and they provide jobs for our community, and at the same time, we benefit from royalties from the fishes that they catch within our waters, because I believe under the CNMI covenant, we are supposed to be self-sustaining economically, so I think that we should have the ability to be able to negotiate with other countries to give them to give them the privilege of, of them coming in to fish in our waters, but at the same time can also assist in patrolling our waters and report and work with the Coast Guard, in conjunction. So you'll have like the CNMI or Gulf Guam, giving rights to come and fish, and at the same time, the private industries would generate money, and at the same time helping out the Coast Guard in patrolling the waters. Would that be feasible?
It's certainly an interesting question. And maybe there's some other, maybe there's even some other models outside of that would be worth exploring. I think, when it comes to the ability to fish, the Coast Guard's probably, I would defer to NOAA and NMFIS to understand, and I can take that as a question to take away from here, and we can try and get back to you with an answer. But I think primarily the regulator for what you're talking about would be NOAA and NMFIS, as opposed to the Coast Guard, who's more concerned with the enforcement of fishing requirements and also safety of licensee.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Representative Adon. I recognize Representative Omar.
Thank you, Vice President. I think just on a comment, just to touch base on with Speaker Munya Barnes, Vice Speaker Munya Barnes, and Representative Colbury with how our governments or how we can both work together and stuff to address with the Coast Guard. I guess as a body, this body, perhaps a joint effort to appeal to the U.S. Congress or even to our federal partners in that case to further increase capacity for the Coast Guard for patrols in the Northern Islands, especially in regards to illegal fishing and with what we have in place with submerged lands and more recently the Marine National Monument, right? We can see how we can increase patrols or even a presence up there especially. And I also speak on this behalf because I represent the Northern Islands in my district. So just to deal with the illegal fishing, with illegal entry, human trafficking, and the present drug trade that we're all affected from the Northern Islands to the main 3 islands and then down here to Guam. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Omar. I recognize Senator Brown.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to expound on the question that our Vice Speaker asked with regards to illegal aliens coming into Guam, because I didn't have a lot of comfort with your response. I understand, what the role is of the Coast Guard, but at the same time, I don't know that these individuals, these illegal aliens that are getting on these boats and coming to, beaches around Guam, wherever, to get in and get themselves to come into the island, and they're being brought in by smugglers. I really would like to know does the Coast Guard have any more role or jurisdiction? I mean, 20 years ago, we used to have bigger ships just ramming into our reefs. And I'm a little concerned. I mean, I understand national policy these days. The southern borders are open to whoever, whatever in the U.S. mainland, which is, hopefully that policy will get addressed. But for our region, we're worried about putting missile defense systems up here to counter any potential missiles that might be coming in from China or North Korea. And yet we have illegal aliens of which we don't know who they are, what their motives are for coming into Guam. And I don't see or feel a lot of effort being put in to try to narrow down who these players are and what to do with them and what potential threat they could bring into us. Because obviously, if there's anything that's going to happen, I think, we all talk about how we're such a target for that potential action. And the fact that we are going to be building all these missile defense systems around the island to counter that is scary. So I just want to know, at least from your Coast Guard side, and I think we probably need to expound on other federal entities as to what the heck is going on or what additional steps are being taken, because these guys are strolling around Guam or CNMI or wherever the case may be and have ulterior motives. I mean, that's concerning to me, and I'm even more concerned if there's less effort to address keeping them out of our island, or if we find them or capture them, we're doing a little more than just, you already passed to port entry, because I don't know that they came through the CNMI. They may have come through another source and came into Guam. So is there more going on than what you're telling us? Because I'm just not comfortable with the answer you gave a little earlier.
Could you be more specific with your question?
I want to know what efforts, be it you and the Coast Guard, are doing to even address these issues of illegal aliens coming into Guam, what their purpose is here. We don't know what the intent is of why they're coming in. You mentioned that because they already may have come through a port of entry in the CNMI, that it's less an issue of concern for the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard's primarily concerned about ocean safety and safety aboard vessels.
So again, as I said, I think CBP or even a lawyer would be best equipped, not I, to speak to the legalities of it. However,
But is any more effort being done at all by the Coast Guard in terms of your surveillance in our waters here to even look and intercede on those issues if there's concern, if you identify a vessel that may be questionable? Because we know in almost all these cases, from what we're hearing, these are individuals being smuggled into Guam. Or they might be smuggled into the CNMI, I have no idea.
Yes, of course.
I mean, does the Coast Guard have more presence and surveillance with regards to that? Because I think we all would like some comfort level to know that there's an umbrella over Guam or the Northern Islands to protect us from these potential threats, considering the, really hostile environment we are. I mean, there's a whole big reason why we're dealing this massive military buildup that we're dealing with here in Guam and in Tinian. There's a reason for that. And so I just want to know what other efforts are being taken by the federal government to protect us, particularly from illegal aliens that are coming in from countries that are not our friends.
Yes, of course. So, as I said, we patrol those waters. We leverage electronic tools to monitor vessels. We use the maximum of our capability to determine and interdict any threat that there is to either CNMI or Guam. In addition, specifically on this issue, the Coast Guard was a participant in the Governor's Task Force some time ago, 2 years ago. Forgive me, I may have gotten the time frame wrong, but it is an interagency effort to try and determine whether or not there's a vessel that is coming in to be intercepted, and then to put resources in the way to intercept it. You raised human trafficking, and that really falls in that same bucket. Human trafficking obviously is illegal. To my knowledge, there's no evidence that has been occurring, but at the same time, across the interagency, when we think about the efforts of HSI, local customs, Customs and Border Protection writ large, all of those agencies collectively from the federal level are highly interested in the potential of human trafficking, and I assure you are trying their very hardest to detect it and to interdict it if it exists here.
Well, I know we've had cases here at our federal court of these smugglers that have been bringing people into Guam that have been indicted and convicted. But I do have to say, Mr. Vice President, I hope we have a future opportunity, because I think the collective security of our region, considering the geopolitical dynamics of what's going on in our part of the world, is probably something that should be a key issue of discussion, because I really would like to know from our other federal partners. Certainly appreciate the Coast Guard being here today, but I think we'd like to know to what degree there is surveillance and safety to our island. I want to know there's more than just missile defense systems that are going to be going on in Star Wars in the sky. I'd like to know what's going on in the water and the land that we can do to ensure that we protect ourselves, because these are not our friends. I mean, they have very much intent to harm, if not destroy our people and our very way of life. And I don't think we want to be left at the short end of the stick with regards to that. So I appreciate your response, and thank you for the opportunity to ask these questions.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Recognize Senator Lujan.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. To continue on what Senator Brown was saying, Commanders, and this is probably above your pay grade, but I'll address it anyway, because I think it's great that we're here collaborating on these issues that we face out here. And, well, let me ask this question. Does the Coast Guard have an MOU with maybe CBP or maybe TSA in regards to patrolling, again, our waters here? Because I know some of these situations where the illegal aliens, they fall under CBP, but they don't patrol our waters, and TSA definitely doesn't. And I'll give you an example here in regards to the treatment of say, the illegal aliens that come here. Well, I tell you, when we fly from here to Honolulu, we're treated like illegal aliens, because we have to get down, okay? I mean, we check our bags here. We go through TSA and here. We have to check our bags, and maybe you'll see this when you go, if you fly from here to maybe LA and you have to stop by Hano, is that you take your bags out, and when you pick up your bags and you take it out of the customs area there, you've compromised your bags. So you have to recheck them again, and you have to go through the whole situation of being checked, although you were checked here. That's why we're pushing for the pre-screening to happen here in Guam. So these are the things, the inequities that are bestowed upon us out here. And yet we have, again, we read almost on a weekly basis of illegal aliens coming in to Guam, and we're saying, well, okay, where's CBP? Where's TSA? But TSA is ready to CBP and TSA is ready to, again, put U.S. citizens through this regiment of what they had gone through already here in Guam. So again, it's important that you know, we collaborate in these issues and bring it to Congress or you know, it's because these are things that you know, we're flying now. When we fly to the States, we're considered domestic. Okay, we're a domestic flight, 8 hours domestic. In the very beginning, when we were considered as domestic, we weren't fed because it was domestic flight. What other domestic flight from the United States treats its citizens like they treat a Guam, Hawaii domestic flight? U.S. citizen flying domestic, for that reason, an illegal alien flying domestic. They don't treat them that way. They treat all U.S. citizens flying from Guam to Hawaii as a domestic flight, but treat him as an illegal alien. I mean, we're America.
Yes, sir.
So they tell us. But we're certainly not treated, in a lot of instances, equally. And I applaud the efforts that we have here today, because these are some of the things that we have endured for years.
Yes, sir. Yeah, certainly as an air traveler, I can relate to your concerns. But there's really nothing.
No. I know
to
it's beyond you, but you know, I mean, there's no other session here that we have to address this. So you're getting the blunt of the.
Thank you, sir.
So, but it's not directed to you. But I know they're hearing. You know, there's people beyond your pay grade that are listening to this as well. So, but thank you very much, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Senator Lujan. I recognize Senator Babauta.
Thank you, Vice President Manglonia. Welcome, Mr. Kistner. Sorry. First, I want to thank the Coast Guard for their prompt responses with respect to these foreigners trying to cross the borders between CNMI and Guam through our open water. I know the Coast Guard has always played a significant role in that. You've always stood watch, so I want to thank you for that. Thank you for having the Coast Guard C-130 available to assist Rhoda with the recent typhoon they experienced. Hats off to your team. But my concern lies with the ports within the CNMI. Tinian is building up the divert airfield there. Is the Coast Guard a part of the assessment team with respect to our ports, seaports, to conduct and recommend infrastructure hardening or maritime, fortifying our maritime infrastructure to bring the military to a level of readiness? And I've brought this issue up with APIL. I'm going to bring it up here in Mila. I've brought it up to the OIA with the territorial workshop that the second part will be conducted in Oahu later on this month. But if anything happens to the Apra Harbor, sir, the chain of supply to the CNMI will be totally cut off. And economists tell me that our food supply will be affected by at least 6 weeks to Guam, if anything happens to the ports in Guam. To the CNMI, it's an additional 6 weeks at least before we can even get any transshipment of goods. So is the Coast Guard involved in the assessments of our ports, Saipan, Tinian, and Rhoda, to fortify our maritime infrastructure so that it is redundant to what is here in Guam, so that the military has an alternate port for their supplies as well?
So, yes and no. I think the Coast Guard's, one of the Coast Guard's best roles in this space is by helping through emergency preparedness drills, right? So when we do a hurricane drill or a pollution drill like the one we just did up in CNMI, we can learn from that, take away lessons. So if we look at the majority of the islands throughout Micronesia, even all the way to Hawaii, right? The islands of Hawaii generally have a single port, just like here, and there is no secondary port that is of suitable infrastructure to move significant amount of goods to help in the event that the original port is taken out. It is a critical vulnerability of our maritime transportation system out here, and that's why it's very important that at least for that sole port, that we're maintaining to the very best of our ability an efficient and functional maritime transportation system through that sole entity. Beyond identifying the benefit of having an alternate port, I would say the Coast Guard's role diminishes. It is a civil emergency planning function to try and identify how a locality would respond to an emergency in the event that a port closure of some duration occurs. It is smart emergency planning to think about that problem, to understand what options exist or don't exist to deal with that problem. You know, could an alternate port become the primary port and reverse the flow of cargo? These are all really important emergency planning thought experiments, and I would highly encourage, you know, all of our leaders, especially here, to be thinking about these problems and how we would respond to them. In terms of the question, I guess the other part of the question, which is the Coast Guard involved in infrastructure assessments? So the Coast Guard does security infrastructure assessments for ports and talks about what potential security concerns there may be. But when you in terms of asking about like a specific port terminal or building a new port terminal, those are more of a port authority or a municipalities or a individual corporation's development plan. The aspect of that would be the Coast Guard's key Coast Guard interest is how does the maritime transportation system efficiently interface with that? So, you know, is the channel safe to put a terminal there? Are there aids to navigation that would be required to help mark those new channels or that sort of thing? So there's a Coast Guard nexus, but it's primarily on the water side. It's not specifically to the, say, building of new port infrastructure. We generally respond to that and see how to integrate it into the existing maritime transportation system. That said, you know, we are always available as a resource to those who are looking into projects to renovate or otherwise improve existing port infrastructure. And so we do participate when asked on studies like that, and we can provide our expertise in terms of how the maritime transportation system is best managed to accommodate this new need.
Thank you, and I understand the role that the Coast Guard plays in terms of identifying security risks with ports within your jurisdiction, but I think it'd be important also for Coast Guard, COMNAP MAR in particular, or it's called something else now, Mariana's Regional Command, MRC, to bring this issue up because it is very critical at this point in time with all the tensions going around in our vicinity, that this be addressed also at the DOD level. And I think it's important for Regional Command here to bring it up also to Indo-PACOM and as far maybe as the Pentagon level, because the military is charged with our national security here in the Marianas. That's what we gave up of our rights, sovereign rights, you know, so that the military can provide security to our area. And I think it's important that the DOD in particular be involved in every aspect of providing, assessing, fortifying our infrastructure for security risks and also to address emergency response issues. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rebalta. Any other members for the first round? If there's none, for the second round, I recognize the Vice Speaker.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Vice President, and thank you, Commander Kishner, for being here and sharing with us your perspective. I just want to say that with your predecessors, we were able to work and collaborate on a couple of measures that became law and hopefully continue to get implemented here on our island, and that would be the digital manifest and the harmonized code. And because of that, the AAA process is being worked on right now, and we hope that it'll come back for full implementation, and it was through the support of the Coast Guard. So my question is to you is, do you think that there are any laws out there that either of our legislatures can introduce and pass to promote stricter border controls? As I say that, listening to the conversation of our colleagues, we know that there is, we talk about illegal immigrants, we talk about the drug smuggling and human trafficking and all that. Is there anything that you, as Coast Guard, can share with us that may be successful in other places that we can emulate here, or is there anything pending out there that can help us introduce to help the Coast Guard have stricter border controls?
I don't have anything to offer at the time, but I certainly can take that back and see if there's anything that may be additive to that discussion.
I say that with much appreciation, and I ask that question, Commander, because it is through that collaboration that we were able to pass antiquated laws that were in our books. And as we continue to look at our surrounding areas, we continue to look at the threats around us, both our air and our oceans, I think it's important that we realize that we're here coming together as an Marianas, but I also want to extend this bridge out to leverage it with working with our brothers and sisters of the Blue Continent. A lot of our colleagues up here are also a part of the Association of Pacific Island Legislators that will be meeting in March. And you're very close to that as the Coast Guard family. And if there is anything out there that we can do as a group, both from the Marianas concept, but also from the Association of Pacific Island Legislators to help us better support, protect, and preserve our oceans within this Blue Continent. So thank you very much. I bring that idea so that you can bring it back and let us know what we can do to help our Coast Guard family.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Speaker. And with that, thank you, Commander Kushner. And we thank you for your time here and your presentation to the members, and we thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up, the last on our list today, members, we have from the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation, Executive Director, Mr. Kevin Watson.
It's all right. Is that better? Okay. Thank you for having me here, Honorable Speaker, Vice Speaker, Senators, and Legislators. I'm very honored. And just if we can have the PowerPoint presentation now. And a little bit about myself. I've been here for about a year and a half. I was the Deputy Executive Director for a year. Actually came to Saipan as the Water and Wastewater Division Manager, having come from California, where I worked for 20 years for various municipalities that included Beverly Hills, Oxnard, City of Ventura, City of Upland, and City of Redlands. Also did formed a corporation and did some consulting on the side for a while, because I actually retired from City of Beverly Hills and formed my own corporation, did consulting in the utilities, and then decided to come back out of retirement, worked for the City of Upland and then the City of Redlands for about 6 to 7 years. Retired again, and after 6 months, I decided the retirement wasn't for me, and I started looking for other options, and I saw that an advertisement in the American Water Works Association with for recruitment for a water and wastewater division manager. A few months later, I found myself in Saipan with my wife, and one of the hardest things I had to go through was leaving my granddaughter behind. She's 10 years old and my best friend. Fortunately, she's joined me today for this trip. She's spending a month with me and my wife, and sees now why I love Saipan so much and the Northern Mariana Islands. I think she'll return to visit many times, if not move here. But hopefully you'll all be able to meet her tonight. She's be at the dinner. So next slide, please. Next slide. This is our CNMI is CUC's only publicly owned utility in CNMI for Saipan, Tenya, and Rota, with the critical power, water, and wastewater services. Providing services for 16,000 electrical customers, 10,000 water customers, and 4,000 wastewater customers on the island of Saipan only. Next. CUC provides electrical utility throughout the power generation plants, which is pictured here, and the transmission and distribution lines. Currently, we provide 40 milliwatts to Saipan, 3 megawatts to Tenya, and 2 megawatts to Rota. CUC is committed to improving the CUC power system by reducing our greenhouse emissions through the replacement of non-compliant engines with the new USA EPA Tier 4 gensets, with future plans to incorporate renewable energy sources such as solar and battery storage. This photo is the number, Power Plant 1 is over 40 years old. We are having challenges now when we need to do maintenance and replace parts. They no longer are made, so they have to be custom made. That delays our repairs by up to a year to have to custom make the parts through machining shops and various other sources. Additionally, because of the new our geographical position, the diesel fuels, prone to disruptions by sea, through typhoons, and even our infrastructure. When we got hit by a major typhoon in 2018, FEMA came to our aid with funding to replace the wooden power poles with concrete. That's a long-term process. Fortunately, we have made a lot of progress, and want to thank Guam for, I know I wasn't here at the time, but I understand that you sent our aid to us to help us rebuild our transmission and power structure. And likewise, we returned a favor with Baltimore recently when the typhoon hit Guam and did extensive damage. I think it's very important that we work collaboratively in our challenges of today and in the future. in our solar system, we're way behind Guam. And for instance, net metering, we still have a one-to-one policy set. I know Guam, as I understand, has evolved from that to make it more equitable, both for the power company and the customers. And, you know, I would like personally to reach out to the lawmakers, the experts from Guam, to find out how we can, in CUC, take what you've learned and the challenges that you've experienced and how we might have a smoother transition to net metering policies and revising that net metering policies. That would help us improve our infrastructure to accept the solar power that's going up in public buildings and private homes. Next slide, please. One of the, I mentioned diesel fuel, the power rates. This slide illustrates the CUC fuel adjustment charges from January 2020 through June 2024. The lowest fuel adjustment charge was in May 2020 at approximately 8 cents. The peak fuel adjustment charge was in July 2022 at 37 cents. And the current is now at 24 cents. That is a tremendous impact to our customers because we have to pass these costs to our ratepayers. And we have plans for a 20 megawatt solar power system, but that's still way into the future. The cost is estimated to be about $100 million. We are presently under the process of designing it. We got a grant, and that's helping us along. We've also got presently 9 grant applications out and trying to leverage the federal funding. Next, please. This is our 5-year energy roadmap that shows our plan to help us get more modern equipment and with newer technology to improve the reliability and security of the energy services to CNMI. We are presently working on an emergency energy risk assessment, and that is due by all states and territories by September of this year. I learned while I was in a conference in Oklahoma City that not only is that due in September, but if we fail to meet that deadline, we won't be eligible for the federal funding to help improve our emergency security of our energy system. Next, please. Yeah, the CUC has been working in partnership with the CNMI Green Growth Initiative, particularly to achieve affordable and clean energy. This shows our 10-year goal includes 60% of the total CNMI population to have access to cleaner, affordable, reliable, and modern energy systems or services, which will result in a 50% reduction in greenhouse emissions and 50% of the total CNMI population to have access to their energy consumption through advanced metering technology deployment. Our 3 to 5 year SMART objectives include CNMI to begin with the smallest populated areas that are easily measurable, achievable, and relevant. Will be done in Rota and Tenya. And 4 to 10% of the total CNMI population will have access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy systems or services within 3 to 5 years. Next, please. Next slide again. These are the 24, 25 action items and metric measuring data. Next slide, please. Backup one. Update of the CUC Integrated Resource Plan, update of the net metering policies, commencement of CUC Energy Master Plan, Roadmap and Implementation Plan, replacement of non-compliant air quality emission diesel engines with U.S. EPA Tier 4 compliant to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and initiate the stages for anaerobic digestion in a wastewater plant. I have experience in that. The anaerobic digestion in the wastewater plants actually produces methane gas that can be used to power clean gas burning vehicles, or it can be used through an energy cell to produce electricity. Presently, we utilize aerobic digestion at our wastewater plants that consumes energy, a tremendous amount. And by conversion to an anaerobic, the minimal cost for energy for that process, we will actually be net producing energy to help not only run the plant, but have power fed into our grid. Next, please. Yeah, next slide, please. This is a photo of our new 8.7 megawatt generator currently in the final stages of installation at Power Plant 1 as part of CUC diesel engine replacement program. We are currently in the procurement stages for 2 new engines for the Saipan power plant, number 4, and 1 new engine for the Rota power plant. The Tenya power plant is currently performing preventive maintenance. Next slide, please. Finally, CUC is committed and working with the CNMI state initiative goal of 100% renewable energy by 2045. CUC has submitted a climate pollution reduction grant for a hybrid generation program to replace non-compliant gensets and incorporate solar with battery systems. Saipan pilot project number 1 is a 0.5 megawatt solar. Phase 1 and 2 will be a 20 megawatt solar with battery storage systems in Saipan. And in Tenya, we'll have 5 megawatt solar, and Rota 3 megawatt with battery storage systems at each. Next. So that concludes my presentation, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director Watson. Any questions from any of the members? Recognize the Senate Floor Leader, Senator Magofnia.
Thank you, Vice President. Good afternoon, Mr. Watson. Welcome again, and thank you for your presentation. And congratulations to your ascension as the new Executive Director at CUC. As we are all aware in the CNMI, we are currently experiencing, an economic depression. And one of the most critical conversations that I have with many businesses, from small and medium businesses, is the cost of utilities that they face every day. And I guess my question to you is, a lot of these businesses are on the brink of shutting down. And, we talk about our economy and how to revive it, along with tourism, but a lot of these businesses aren't able to sustain their operations because of the high cost of utilities. So my question to you is, what efforts or initiatives is CUC, or does CUC have any plans to help reduce some? I know that PUC controls the rates, right? But on the CUC's side of operations, what can CUC do to help these small and medium-sized businesses stay in business so that our economy can continue to, to maintain the operations that they are in right now, and hopefully, as the economy gets better, so will their businesses. But I guess my question is, what is CUC doing to help our businesses? Thank you.
Yet, the rates that CUC charges for power hasn't been adjusted since 2014. We are in the process of doing a rate analysis, and we're replacing the older engines with more energy efficient, which will help reduce cost. And with the implementation of solar, which is a multi-year project, that will also help reduce the consumption of diesel fuel, which is our main expense for production of power. So, we're doing what we can as quickly as we can, and hopefully we will be able to bring those rates down, even though, they haven't been adjusted since 2014. With newer, more efficient equipment, I'm hopeful that we will be able to achieve that goal. And if we, once we get the 20 megawatt, that's half of our production for Saipan. So possibly reduce our fuel consumption by 50%. So I am hopeful, and also willing to listen and accept any advice or recommendations from Guam. I know they, like I said earlier, they have achieved what we haven't yet in terms of solar power. So I would like to learn more about the challenges that we face since they've already experienced that. So if we can reduce mistakes, then that will reduce cost.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. Watson. And just a follow-up question, I guess. I was looking at your presentation, and I noticed that for 2024 and 2025, you had a list of action items that CUC is planning to achieve, right? But I didn't see anything in there with regards to maybe replacing the generators that would help reduce the consumption and the cost of fuel. So can you give us an estimated timeline as to CUC's efforts to try and secure those new generators?
Yeah, we're actually in the process now. As that last picture indicated, the larger one at our Power Plant 1 is under construction and will be, within the next 6 to 12 months, we'll be bringing it online. We've recently received the bids for smaller generators, both in Rota and Saipan, to be deployed in other locations of Saipan that will give us more reliability and reduce power outages. They're 3.5 megawatt generators.
Thank you for your answer. So would you say we're looking at something this year or perhaps maybe next year. I know that the businesses are just curious to know when, when they can start seeing those costs go down. So not to put you on the spot or anything, but it's always, to businesses, it's important to give them kind of a time frame so they can properly forecast their business, their business expenses and stuff like that. So do you foresee possibly getting those generators this year or next year?
It's about a 1-year process to install them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Watson. I yield, Vice President.
All right, thank you, Senator Magofnia. If there's none, thank you for your time today, Director Watson. Thank you for your time. Thank you, members, for your understanding. Unfortunately, we were unable to have Admiral Hoffman over. There was a last-minute cancellation, and so any concerns or any issues you would like to bring up, we can bring up in one of our discussions, and we can relay those messages to the Admiral when he comes to visit over in the CNMI. And so with that, before we close out today's session, I would like to open the floor to any of the members to provide any comments or recommendations or suggestions based on today's events. Recognize our speaker.
Jesus Masi, I just wanted to thank all the panels for today. I thought they were excellent and very helpful for us as we're going to move forward and try to solve some of these issues or make sure that we are at least consistent and united on them. And I want to thank the CNMI for their efforts to invite the Admiral and to make sure that we get a presentation on Mariana's regional security and the issues that really are driving a lot of our other issues as well. And it's unfortunate that the cancellation, but thank you for your efforts for that and for bringing all of these expert panelists from the CNMI. I want to thank our Guam panelists as well for stepping up to the plate and giving us information that we can use today. And thank you. It's been a real exciting, I think, assembly, and looking forward to more tomorrow. So just Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, members. We will recess until tomorrow morning at 9:30. Thank you.